In the question of which one is better, Webflow or Elementor, I know that you're not going to trust me because if you've been watching my channel, you know I'm a Webflow fan, and so I'm not credible. But I've recently met with Alyssa, who is a professional Elementor and Divi developer for years, and she's now made the decision to move to Webflow, and I wanted to understand why. Which one is better? What are the pros and cons and why she's making this decision? So in the following conversation, you can learn more about her and how she's thinking about these different platforms, which one is better and why she's making the move. Enjoy the conversation. Hi, Alyssa. What's up? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you. You've been kind of this person I've been viewing from afar, and it's really cool to chat with you in person. Well,
fantastic. I'm really excited to chat with you as well. So let's get started. I'd love to hear from you about, your studio, your work, how you got into web design, and kind of like about your background and how you got into WordPress.
Yeah. So I've got 4 kiddos, and they were all born basically within a year of each other. And after I had all 4 of them, I was craving something that was like for me. And I had always done design, but also like computer programming, technical troubleshooting in the past. And even with my kids' birthdays, I would plan like 150 people parties, and I'd design and print the invitations, and I would do like floor plans in the seating room, and like I would just design everything. And so when I was craving something for me, one of my friends suggested logo design, and that quickly morphed into logo design and web design. And then within a couple of years, that morphed into strategy, copywriting, like the beginning to end of that whole process. And then a couple of years ago, right as COVID joined the world, I like narrowed down into the piece of that whole big scope that I really love to do, which was development. So specifically development for other agencies or for other designers, not wanting to design myself, but just to build things. And yeah, so that's kind of where I landed with where I am today. And I've done all of the pieces and I can, but I found that for me, the development is where I enjoy the most. And I could literally do it, in my sleep. It just is so fun and natural for me that, yeah. So
cool. So how did you get into WordPress? Like, why would that your choice, WordPress or Elementor specifically? Did you try other things like, I don't know, Wix or Squarespace? Why was that your choice?
I think at the time, so this was like 2015. And at the time, I just knew there was a lot of WordPress templates. Like when I Googled like how to build a website, because again, I'd never done it before. I had a computer programming degree from university, but I'd never built a website before. It was just the thing that came up on Google, to be honest, was that there was WordPress templates. And I remember logging in and being so confused at the WordPress backend and knowing that there were plugins, but having no clue what that meant. And knowing that I wanted to create pages. And I remember posting to my Facebook feed, and I still remember it because it comes up in my memories every year, being so excited, customizing my very first WordPress design. But when I look at it now, like 7 years later, what I actually did was change the fonts and the colors. But I was so excited at the about it that I was creating a custom design. It was. So I've come a long way since that. But yeah, Google is what brought up WordPress to me, and I was so excited to dive in, and I morphed and grew a lot from that. But yeah, that's where I started.
How did you stumble upon Elementor?
People talking about it, like other developers, other clients wanting to use Elementor. I started with Divi, like a different page builder. That was the one that I used almost. Like once I realized that customizing the fonts and colors was not really enough for a website, I knew I wanted to use something to make building easier. And I came across Divi, but shortly thereafter, I came across Elementor.
Got it. And when you were working using Elementor and Divi, were you also working, just like you've said earlier, doing the building for design agencies, or were you working directly with clients? Like what kind of websites were you building and for who?
Yeah. I'll say, so I still do build on with Divi and Elementor now, as well as Webflow. But back when I was using them more, the majority of the time, it was that I was designing and developing them within my agency. So I wasn't being outsourced from other agencies. It was all in my in-house.
Got it.
And it was really every kind of website. It was whatever the client needed. Typically, they were not big e-commerce stores. They were just informational 5 to 6 page, like my homepage about us.
Marketing websites.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. What was this? Do you mind sharing the scope of pricing, or like how big were the websites?
Yeah. So the websites varied greatly, especially with whether they wanted the branding as part of the website project, if they wanted copywriting as part of the website project. Back then, I had projects anywhere from, I will say, I started selling websites for like 400 Canadian dollars, which is a very extremely silly low price. I don't do that anymore. But my rates back at that point with, everything included was anywhere from, I had prices as low as like $2,000, and I had projects as high as like, I think 10,000-ish was like kind of the top end of my work back then. That's narrowed down a bunch now that I've narrowed down my scope into just development on Webflow primarily. It's usually around the 4,000 to 5,000 mark.
So let's talk about the move to Webflow. Is that because you see different possibilities? Like, why did you move to Webflow? Is this client demand? Like, what made you, after you've spent so much time learning these two tools and feel confident with them and can probably work proficiently with them, why learn Webflow and why make this move?
Yeah. So I am all about efficiency and doing the best with doing the best I can in the time I have, if that makes sense. So if there's a better way to do something, I want to do it that way. So I've always been on the lookout. That's why I incorporated Elementor, not just Divi. I didn't exclude it because I always want to find whatever's the best for that project. And I actually came across Webflow through you. I took I think it was called the 10K Web Designer. I don't remember if it's called, change something now.
Yeah, it's our web design program. Yeah.
I took that course, like I want to say 3 years ago. And through there, I saw Webflow on your website. You had talked about Webflow. You had your YouTube channel with Webflow. So that's how I came across it. And it intrigued me for a couple reasons. Initially, I didn't, go all in on Webflow for a good year. I was just kind of watching and like seeing what you were doing with Webflow and seeing with like how it worked. And I was tinkering the back end. And eventually I took your Webflow course. And definitely clients didn't bring it to me. When I started using it with clients, I brought it to them most of the time. But the thing that intrigued me the most was, I'm not going to say how easy it was to build, because I know that a lot of people say that about Webflow, that it's like, the best tool for web designers. I actually disagree completely that it's the best tool for web designers, but I think it's a really unlimited tool almost. Like you could create anything, you could build anything with it. With Divi and Elementor, you could use the page builder to kind of get the structure you wanted. You almost always had to get plugins to create the functionality that you wanted. And even using like grid templates, like you had to customize the like layout of your blog posts, you had to get a very expensive grid plugin to make those edits. Whereas with Webflow, it was like seemingly unlimited, like I could build anything. So that's when I started to look into it a little bit more, mention it to clients as they came to me as a potential platform to build on. Initially I let the client kind of take the lead on it, and I didn't usually push Webflow hard at all. But again, I learned about it and tinkered with it, took your course for about a year before I started like pushing it to my clients more. And that's because I really feel like it's a better platform for most cases of website building.
But so you've mentioned the ease to do layouts that were not possible previously and the not needing to install or multiple plugins.
Yeah.
Were those the core reasons? Like, do all of the designs that you're doing have custom layouts that make this necessary? I'm just trying to play kind of like devil's advocate and ask, is this the whole thing that's worth switching a platform and learning a new platform? Like, is it enough?
Right. So definitely for me, I also specifically, other than just like building websites, I built custom websites. I almost never use templates. I've always, even now, find them more pain to work with templates that they're worth. Like if you want to customize it, just build a custom. I don't know. I didn't find templates faster. And so I always built custom. So having, a page builder.
Elementor didn't allow you to build custom. I mean, they have
you could build custom as in you could drag and drop rows and sections and modules into those sections. But so like even now, I do have a few clients that use, a couple use Elementor, and I have to like think about how I would do it in Webflow and then translate that. How does Elementor sort of let me do it in a back end way? So with Webflow, I love using divs and, Flexbox and all of that. With Elementor, you have to play within the structure of sections, intersections, columns. It's more limited. Like I have to like make it work. Whereas with Webflow, it just works. You know what I'm saying? Like it.
My assumption is that, they have limited options to make it actually easier for people to build. So they don't have to take courses and learn this, right? And it's very easy.
Yes, but I like the control. I like to be able to control everything about it. One of the things I pride myself on in working with agencies and designers now is building a nearly pixel for pixel site. So you bring me any design at all and I can build it. And it look nearly identical to what you've designed. And Webflow lets me do that 10 times easier than WordPress with a page builder does.
Because you would have to, in a way, hack the components into looking at it. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out for you what has been the major maybe benefit of, like, was it making it, managing to build the layout faster? Was it charging more? Was it being able to take on projects you couldn't before? Like what has been the major benefit for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, the two biggest things are the Webflow CMS collections that it has made creating any sort of custom content much easier. Like again, in WordPress, you have to hack within the system. So like WordPress was made for blog posting, right? So if you want like a team member's custom post type or like a course's custom, those are all things you have to like, again, use plugins and like, meddle within it. Whereas Webflow, you literally go like create a collection. So I create collections all the time because it's just easier to like build from. And then the other thing was, as I was building in Divi primarily, but in WordPress with Elementor or Divi, the bigger the site, meaning like once it hit more than like 5 to 8 pages, and once the pages grew bigger than like 4 sections, it was so slow, so laggy to save, to build, like to drag and drop. It freeze. I'd have to like hold the module and click it and make sure it was in the right spot before I let go, because otherwise it could just jump to another area because it was like the lag time. Whereas with Webflow, the only thing that I've seen affected the bigger the project is how long it takes to publish. But the actual build. And
by the way, they kind of actually updated like in the last week.
They did just like a week ago. Yeah. No, I noticed that. And I heard about that. But yeah, that's the only thing that sort of slowed down was how long it took to publish. But the actual build, like the modules and adding components, didn't change at all. So it was just faster. Like my own website, and I will say this, which I think is ironic. I built my website in WordPress using Divi. Even today, that's the website that you see. It's a pain in the butt to edit because it's so slow and like I have to edit in the wireframe view. I can't use the visual builder because it's so slow. So I want to rebuild it in Webflow, but your own website always takes the back seat. But yeah. So the biggest two things are the collections that you can build in Webflow and then the speed that I can build.
Fantastic. So you've mentioned you're still doing client work for, Divi and Elementor. So now that you have this perspective between the platforms, why do you think people like some clients still want to use them? I mean, you've mentioned a bunch of things that are much easier for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's just client comfortability and like where they are in their web journey. Most of the clients that I have using, Webflow or WordPress with Elementor or Divi are my hourly clients. So the clients that I'm not actually building a site for from beginning to end. They're the clients that already have a website on WordPress that I just need to they want me to update something, or they are a developer, but they've hit a block and they need someone to come in that has more experience to fix it. So usually the clients that I'm working with that have WordPress and don't want to move it because they're already on WordPress and they don't want to. Yeah, new. Exactly.
So do you think, from your perspective and with the clients or agencies that you've been working with, have you seen a shift in demand in terms of new projects that are being started, more Webflow projects are being started versus WordPress projects? Or
in terms of my scope, I have
you've mentioned earlier I had to push Webflow to clients. So I wonder if this is still the case, and what's the reaction?
Yeah. So the majority of my clients now, I would say 95% of my clients are Webflow projects. And that's two reasons. One, I have learned the benefits of Webflow and I'm easily able to articulate that to the client. However, the other thing is that I work with two of the agencies that I work with are they sell Webflow. So when they come to me, they're only coming to me with Webflow projects. So it's kind of the client, I don't think, is looking for Webflow. I think the client's looking for a website. The agency that I contract for sells them on Webflow, and then they bring me Webflow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think the client is looking for Webflow, but I do think it's a really good tool that offers a lot of possibility.
Fantastic. Are there still cases where, if you would have to work with a client from scratch, you would recommend them use WordPress?
No, there's not. I would recommend, I don't recommend Webflow for everything, but the cases that I don't recommend Webflow are primarily e-commerce. I personally don't feel that e-commerce has gotten to where it needs to be in Webflow yet. But I'd recommend Shopify over WordPress with WooCommerce. So would I recommend WordPress? No. Mm-mm.
Got it.
Will I use it if a client requires it? Maybe. But will I offer it or recommend
you've made
it? No.
quite the shift. You've made quite the shift.
Yes.
So here's my final question, I think.
Sure.
Did you love the WordPress and then you've somehow fallen in love with Webflow, or you've had to tolerate WordPress all along because that's what the situation was, and now you're like, I don't have to deal with this crap anymore. So
yes, which one is the latter? It was the latter, because with Elementor, you would update the theme and then all your global styles would just disappear and you'd have to redo them. I've heard that from countless people. With Divi, you update a plugin and it breaks another plugin. Or I have one client, and this is a client who we are now currently transitioning to Webflow. I'm literally rebuilding their current design in Webflow, but they've had a site on WordPress for 6 years. There are almost 100 plugins. There are on the daily 40 some plugins needing updates. It's a pain. And so when I discovered Webflow and learned how to use it, it was like no question. I was like, this is way easier. Because like I said at the beginning, I'm all about efficiency. Whatever I can get done the best with the least amount of friction, I want to do that. Webflow is easily way better in my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Alyssa. I feel like I've learned a lot, and thank you
so
welcome. Much for sharing your experience and insights together with us. Anything else you want to share, or we'll drop the link to your website below the video. Anywhere else you recommend people to follow you, look out for you?
No, hit me up on my website is the best thing. I'm a viewer of things like Twitter, but I'm not typically a poster there, so I'm not really followed on there. But yeah, I just love using Webflow and specifically working with agencies. So if you're an agency and you need a web developer in Webflow, hit me up.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.